Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Hey, friends, before we kick off this week's episode, we got a little surprise for you.
Yeah, we are doing a conference on boundaries for free. We want to invite you.
What?
I know. We want to invite you to come learn about boundaries while we have none. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But we want you to be able to be a part of it. We have a school, the Life Consulting Masterclass. It's a 3-year program. And every year we do conferences where there's a deep dive on different subjects. And this year we're inviting you to join the school for the conference on boundaries.
Yeah,
it'll
come
be
hang out.
interactive. It'll be fun. It'll be empowering.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good time. And it's October 18th and the 19th, Friday and a Saturday. All you have to do is go to Justin and Abi, that's abi.com/boundaries. And you can get all the extra details there. You can sign up for it. We'll send you a little something in your email. And check your spam.
You have to respond. You have to get the email and respond to it to be able to come. Because last time, all the links got lost in spam.
Yeah. So go check out that spam folder if you don't find it right away after you hit send.
Yeah.
Okay. So, hey, without further ado, here's the episode you're wanting to watch. Well, I'm in my own personal hell today. So
Wait, thank you.
I'm here with Abi and Jenna and a little bit of torture. It's ADHD hell.
Can we start now? We're talking. Give us 10 more minutes.
Shut up, Justin. Yeah, no, it is an interesting mix because you're two people that I absolutely enjoy. I mean,
that's right.
I especially enjoy you. I'm married to you.
Right?
Yes.
I have to say that. Jenna, you're always so fun and delightful.
That's very
But
true.
without Aaron here to like balance that, you two are just, I don't know where we're going to go.
take off.
Yeah.
And like run through any barrier, like fences, like walls. We're like, no, Justin, you can't stop us.
But one of the things I am so excited for today is getting to have you on, as a side note, Jenna, because you are filled with so much wisdom and joy. Like I find pleasure hearing your stories. I get challenged as you share your processes and stuff like that. And so I'm like, this is so fun. I'm going to enjoy it. And I'm also going to be a fly on the wall maybe a little bit as you two are running this train off the track.
I kind of feel like he's a handler, though. More so like, back in the ring, guys. Back in the ring.
Yeah, that's true. I planned this podcast series with Jenna and then just invited Justin to be here. So we've got a plan. We're going somewhere. You interject whenever you want.
Yeah, it's called I'm going to have boundaries with the two of you.
Are you? Is that what you're going to do?
Yeah. What are we doing? We're talking about boundaries.
Yes. I can't believe we haven't had more conversations about boundaries on our show before.
I know.
But this feels so exciting and something that is vital to living a life where you don't hate people and you don't hate yourself. And so I thought we'll jump in with sharing a little bit of our story and you just jump in whenever you want to add your story too.
That's how we're going to play this game, huh? Put that there. I love that.
Yeah.
Fun game.
Jenna is one of the best people at boundaries I've ever met. And it's because she lives in the gray with boundaries where she's very aware of what she needs and also finds ways to meet other people. So many boundaries is like such a loaded topic. I know I have felt this way before. Like, oh no, they're learning about boundaries. They're about to become a crazy person.
Boundaries. That's what it feels like. Like you got a new favorite toy.
You're hitting everyone with
Boundaries broke my nose.
Yeah, totally. When people learn boundaries, it often becomes very extreme and aggressive and black and white. And often people do it in a very villainizing way. We're looking for deciding that people are bad enough that we can move them away from us instead of boundaries being about taking care of our own well-being so that we can love others better. Boundaries actually, and that's what I watch you do. And that's why I wanted to talk to you specifically about it, is because boundaries are a way of love, not a way of removing people from your space or getting people out. It's a way to keep love turned on inside of you.
It protects my ability to love them is what it feels like. I think I've done it sometimes. I mean, like we never do it perfectly where I'm like, oh, that was hindering love. That was moving people out, or the opposite is having like no boundaries. And the analogy before I found boundaries, I felt like a buffet and like I had no control. People would just bring their plates and empty everything. And I'd be like empty all the time. I was like, this is what Christianity is. Like just letting yourself get pillaged. People walking away with 4 plates of rolls only. You're like, I will have rolls for 5 weeks. That's okay. But realizing like there's something in between, and it actually helps me. I think protect love is a really big versus hinders love. I think I thought it would hinder love, but actually done well. It almost like directs the flow. Like this is the way the stream is going versus like, nope, no water over here.
Yes.
I'm going to have like 7 analogies.
I love it.
Per minute, actually. It just increased.
I love that. So we're going to share our journeys today about learning how to have boundaries. And I thought we'd start with asking like, what were you like with boundaries as a young person?
Oh,
you can answer this too. I'm just
I
letting
can?
you know that.
Aw, thanks.
I'm going to turn to you. I want you to have
want
time
to be
think
part of
while we
this.
start.
Yeah.
So Jenna, what were boundaries like for you as you were growing up?
I've always been pretty high empathy and wanting to love people well, which I think a lot of times those, and then combined with Christianity of like being in action. So the buffet analogy of like an empty, I was like, anything people want or need, they get to just come take versus me deciding. So I remember I got asked to go to prom by someone in high school, and it was not someone who I wanted to go to prom with. But I remember being like, I in my head, I thought, Jesus probably wants me to say yes, like the little Christian girl.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, this would be the good thing to do. I should do that. Like lots of should, all this. So then I went to prom with him, but it was like a pretty far commute because it was actually, it gets more interesting. I didn't quite realize he was homeschooled, and he was invited to a local guest. Like this Christian high school was so small that they each got to invite a guest couple.
Oh,
so we were the guest couple. So he didn't know anybody.
Oh my gosh!
So it kept like unfolding. I was like, okay, this is more like my awkward level was like rising. I'm like, I'm gonna drown. So then on the way home, I was just tapped like all of my kind whatever that I had. So I faked being asleep for an hour and a half. You guys, it got so bad that he had planned like a sweet picnic. So he pulled over and he tried to wake me, and I did not wake up.
you faked your way through it.
I'll never forget. And then I got home and then like, oh, what? And then I like went up to my bed, and then he left like because he had whatever. And I was like, thanks, man. I texted him the next day, but I was like, that is how not bad. Like I could have so honestly, I feel sad because on some ways like I was lying and was disappointed. That's such a good example. Like that was more dishonest and hurtful than if I had been like, I'm really tired.
Yeah.
Do you like I'm gonna
could we go home?
Yes. Could we go home earlier? Could I like be not picked up as early? Like it ended up being like a 10-hour day or something like that when I could have been like, I'll meet you there. Or even nowadays, I probably would have said like, I'll meet you there and I'll drive. Yes. Because I always feel more powerful when I know that I can leave and control things. But it was just like anything they want when you say yes is what. So it makes me laugh. But I feel like you've got to have some stories like that.
Well, hold on. The interesting thing about your story is you still set boundaries. And this is what a lot of people do is they won't set them with words and thoughtful intention. So you set boundaries by pretending to be asleep. Yeah. Like that was how you set boundaries.
Raise your hand if anyone out there has done that.
Let me see if this works right now.
Yeah.
I'm getting out of this podcast.
That's actually so true. People do it without the words.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that actually made me think of when I was younger. So my mom, a lot of how we learn boundaries also is watching our parents. Yeah. How do they set boundaries? My mom had no ability to set boundaries, but she got sick a lot. Mm-hmm. And so whenever she was sick, she was allowed to not do whatever she didn't want to do. So her body became her boundary. Oh. And I grew up same way, no boundaries. Like I'm laughing at your story because I was so bad at saying no that multiple times guys asked me on dates and I didn't want to just say no. So I said yes. But then I invited Pizzi, my best friend, to come with me.
Did you
on
tell
the
them?
date? No, they picked me up and she was there. And you could feel this instant deflation. And then each step of the date, they're like, oh, is she going to come to this too? And I'm like, yeah. And
are you weirded out by this? This is so normal.
Totally normal. But again, those are weird ways to set a boundary. And my fear of hurting people actually created me hurting them much more.
Yeah.
And I would say most people who are afraid of setting boundaries will find a solution that is anti-productive. And for me, it ended up being sick. I followed my mom in the exact same thing because I'm like, you are allowed to say, I'm so sorry I can't come to this, or I'm so sorry I don't feel good enough to do this. And then it felt like I'm allowed to say no if it's for my body.
Yeah.
I remember times where my body wasn't really that bad. Like I wasn't really that sick.
But no one could tell. So you're like,
but I could say I could use it. And that is something I've had to spend years of unlearning.
Wow.
Because what happened then is my body learned, I'll help you. Basically, I would abandon myself over and over and over again in relationships, and my body would step in when I was doing too much or giving too much or not paying enough attention to myself. My body would step in and it would throw up a wall. But it was a very black and white wall where it's like, now I can't do anything for a month because I've run over my boundaries so much that my body has now said, we'll do nothing for a month to make up for that. And so I kind of lived with this like no boundaries.
Yeah.
Shut everything in my life down. No boundaries, shut everything in my life down. And it was very dysfunctional and also a bad cycle to be friends with sickness in a way that was not healthy. And I have found that a lot of people I know who struggle with chronic sickness have empathy in such a deep level that they are scared to say no. And so their bodies are the things that say no for them.
Wow.
And so that's what, for me, this was a huge part of me needing to learn the journey of boundaries was I had absolutely zero. And I think the ultimate idea was making people happy is why we're here maybe, or like making people feel good. My mom was suicidal for my whole life. So I was constantly like, I need to make her feel good. That's the goal. And boundaries in my head was rejecting people or hurting people. And that wrong definition created chaos.
Yeah.
So
in my world, I didn't have a no. I just had a lot of forced yeses. I had a yes or a forced yes. That I was self-implied. I didn't grow up in a space where no was okay within my household.
Yeah.
And whether that was, no, I'm too sick to do that. No, that doesn't feel good. No, I don't like that. It was just so, boundaries were so eradicated. What I found then, similar to you, Jenna, is that I had this sense of being a good Christian meant that I didn't hurt people's feelings by saying no or telling them what I needed, and a requirement. I couldn't require anything. So there was this idea of I am supposed to be a doormat to the rest of the world, and that's good, and that's going to be affirmed, and that's safe. Because if I try to implement a boundary, I'm going to get ran over. I'm going to get, I think Danny Silk calls it about, maybe it's Danny Silk that talks about big yellow trucked. But you end up getting ran over by a giant truck. Like it's going to be worse off. So just accept the yes and the pain, accept having to say yes and the pain that will come with the yes. That's less worse than saying the no, setting a boundary, whether no's the answer or setting the need out there and what could come with that. And what I eventually did, I did find a boundary, and it was called the dreaded dead zone.
I was thinking, is this an inside joke?
No, he's going to explain it. I just was like, oh yeah, that is a boundary.
Yeah. And it was finally it's that point when your soul breaks and you're like, F you, F you, F you, F you. And you're angry at everyone and everything. And now all of a sudden you've said, you've crossed these unspoken boundaries that are inside of me, the unspoken no's so often, and created so much pain that now you do not exist to me. You are dead to me. And so I found where a lot of my history was littered with dead bodies, one after another, entire seasons. And I was like, that was a great season until they pushed it too far and now they're dead and I act like it never happened. And so what I found is that I was missing vital good experiences because once I put someone into the dead zone as a boundary, I also put the entire season and the good things into the dead zone as well.
When you say dead zone, it's like, I'm done with you as a person.
It's a space inside of my heart that's like, you're dead to me. You didn't exist. You no longer exist. I don't care about you.
Blacklisted.
You're blacklisted for the rest of my life.
Yeah, which that is, and I love that you're bringing that up because a lot of times if we have no boundaries, we abandon ourselves over and over and over again until something snaps.
Yeah. And then I'd have the snapping point in each of those relationships. And what I became was dangerous for all of those relationships because when I didn't have boundaries, they couldn't trust that my yes was an authentic yes that I was purely giving away without any resentment attached to it or frustration.
Yeah.
And that ended up leading to the danger of like, here they are giving their heart away to me. Unknowingly to them, I'm angry and now they're dead to me. And now relationship is severed, attachment is severed, and they're experiencing a bunch of pain all because I couldn't love them well through having healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
It reminds, this is kind of a different vein, but when I had like 20 employees and I'd have like, they'd all like when they came on, they were so excited for work for us. And then like chronically, they'd be like 2 weeks notice, like out of the blue, like we'd do check-ins every week. And then it'd be like, I'm quitting. And you're like, what?
Out of nowhere.
Finally, I was like, oh, no one feels like it was like a boundary thing where they weren't giving honest feedback about things they weren't happy. So I would get so clear at the beginning when I was hiring people. I was like, I don't feel safe if you don't let me know when things aren't working for you, because then I get outed. And then it actually really like jacks up me trying to find someone in 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
I would much rather know 2 months out when it's like a little, it almost reminds me like when it's a little thing versus like a huge thing when then it's like, I owe you $4,000 with interest versus like, tell me about the $40. Like it doesn't feel as overwhelming, and just kind of realizing how it feels. I've started then applying it to how I want to show up. So even though it feels scary, I'm like, this is the kindness, whether or not they see it or not. And a lot more people, I have to say, when I started doing boundaries and I did them well, a lot more people felt grateful to be like, think about the dude that I went to the prom with. If I had told him like, hey, I actually don't feel comfortable going to prom, he could have maybe found someone who wanted to go to prom with him.
Yes.
And they would have
They would be
appreciated
willing
his
to make
effort.
out with him.
Yeah. Oh gosh. That's so bad. Right there. Had like a natural reaction. Anyways, but my point was like, I think this awareness, like that's not kindness.
Right.
It's like I'm betraying myself and I'm kind of lying. I think that was the big shift for me. I was like, I'm actually lying to you if I'm not telling you what's authentic, like what's happening inside of me. Yes, I'm going to do it. I don't have to tell you everything, like, unfiltered. I'm going to think through what I'm saying. I'm not going to put judgment or blame, but actually not being honest of not wanting to do it. I was like, sometimes I want to do it. That's unfair. I'm stealing this experience from you and who needs me to be, a hostage to the experience.
I know that I had a person in my life where they had sat me down and they were like, are we ever going to be friends? Because they really wanted to be close and united as friends. And I ultimately told them, I was like, we're never going to be friends. Like, that's not going to happen. I am telling you. And they had people in their world that didn't want to give them that same feedback. And they kept experiencing pain in those relationships. And, it was like, I know that would cost them a $40 fine, so to say, that truth. But it was going to be a $4,000 fine if I didn't get honest about my capacity to relate inside of that relationship. Long term, they were going to be even more devastated by it. And it's like you talked about it, like it's actually really kind to bring the reality of our capacities to the table, to actually speak truth of what's going on. It frees people up to go on their own journey. Yeah. It's really good.
I think one of the things, as you were saying that, like to bring the truth, I used to wait if people would ask, like, hey, do you want to go on this trip or whatever. This is actually an example. My husband today texted me about doing a birthday invite that would be couples. And instantly I was assessing like the pros, which you do, like what's it going to cost, like what's going on. And I used to do all of that internally and then give them people yes or no's because I thought, I don't know, I probably thought like they didn't want to hear that. Yeah. But realizing even if I end up as a no, if they get a little bit more of the insight of what the consideration, they're like, oh, you thought about it? Like even Aaron, if it ends up being a no, if I tell him like these 3 factors that I'm thinking about and unsure, haven't arrived at a decision, if I end up at a no, he's not villainized me by my no. He knows some of the process. And even doing that with people like, hey, I haven't figured it out. These are some of the things I'm considering that are leading into it. It's like they're tracking before. And if it goes, they're not surprised by it. Because
Yes.
sometimes it's like this shocking, like, oh, I thought this was a yes. And now it's a no.
Yes.
Can you help me? Like, oh yeah, totally. I can let you know. What you said.
I was going to say that clarity, the information is so vital. Like right there, like it eases people into it, brings them along on the journey.
And then they start to be like,
That's really great.
It's not that you don't like me, or
Yes.
it's not that you don't
They
value
don't create
me.
their own narrative
Story.
in their head.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good.
I actually think, I'll actually say a lot when I'm doing a boundary, like, oh, I value you. Or if I have to say no, like there's some friends that, there's actually friends in our life who they invite us to play pickleball a lot. And I want to play pickleball with them.
Right.
But they are spontaneous people and they'll invite us morning out. And I'm literally calendared out through July.
Totally.
So like I've said no. I was looking back at our group thread and it's just like 10 no's. So
Yes.
finally I was like, oh, I should actually let them, like I've not created a boundary on purpose, but I'll say like, hey, I just sent them a voice memo. I was like, I value you. I think some of the disconnect with me having to say no a bunch is that blah, 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 but we'd like to be friends. This sounds fun to us. If we could plan out further, we'd more likely get a yes. Or there's other people that I'll be like, hey, I have no interest in learning swing dancing. Like if you want to invite me to something else, if you're looking for friendship, we can figure something out. If you're looking for someone to do swing dancing, I'm not your girl.
Yes.
So just kind of being clear about what parts are intriguing or not, because there's a lot involved when we make decisions.
Well, and one of the things I love that this really changed my mentality on boundaries. I was having a conversation with Danny Silk probably like 15 years ago. And I was asking him about boundaries and he said, I often try to give a yes when I give a no. And
Yes.
what you just did was a lot of that. Like, oh, I'm having to say no because spontaneous things don't work really well for us. But it could be a yes if you want to try to plan things ahead. If you don't want to try to plan things ahead, that's okay.
Yes.
Or like, I don't like swing dancing, so that's not the most valuable use of my time because I don't like it. But if you want to invite me to do something else, I would be willing to do that. And so what it does is it actually breaks through that rejection piece of I'm not just saying you're unworthy of value. I'm saying here's what I need to be able to work with you. Here's what I can give when I can't give this.
I actually think about it when people ask me for something. They'll like tell me like, almost it feels like submitting an order. Like I'd like 4 fries and a Coke. And I'm like, okay, wait. And then I go into the kitchen, I'm like, ooh, I have 1 order of fries and a Sprite. I wonder. So then it's like, because I used to just betray myself. And if I went in, there wasn't, I'm like, I'm going to go to the next store or figure out. And then they come back and like, oh, I actually didn't really want a Coke. And you're like, I just died.
Totally.
100%. I changed 3 like events in my life. And then you pivoted at the last moment. And like, now we can't be friends because you don't know how far I ran to get that Coke.
I did so much work to be able to meet you in your needs. And that didn't even matter.
You're like, So what I do now is I'll go back and be like, oh, I don't have that. And I have this. And they're like, oh, and if they're offended or whatever, I just like, hey, this is what I'm totally get that it doesn't work. But I don't automatically like decide, like I won't break the bank to go figure out what their need is, but I will offer them. And I've kind of untangled it. Like I think we really have to do the work with a value for ourselves too. Like if they say no to like come back, it doesn't mean that my like 3 basics when people say no or I have to say no is that it doesn't mean that I'm not lovable. It doesn't mean that I'm not worthy or I'm not valuable. I actually tell myself that and I'll communicate, like I'll say those things.
No to you.
To me, like I'm worth being friends with still, even if, or I'll be like, I want to be your friend because I value blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, I can still communicate that even if I have to give them a no.
So you're like, the things that I feel pain in boundaries, I'll communicate those things to affirm people. Like, I love you. I value you. I want to be friends with you. This is a great thing. I just can't do this.
But I think this begs the question. There are people who I don't. I wasn't going to say value, but like I don't want more friendship. Like that's the hard part for me. So I'll decide like what could I say that is true but could be soothing. Like so I won't lie. I won't be flattered, but I'll be like, oh, so maybe instead of saying like, I value your friendship, I would say like, I feel really loved that you would think through inviting me to this or you'd want me there.
Yes.
Because like, that's honest, but I don't actually want to green light, invite me to more things.
Friendships. Yeah.
I also had an experience like you were saying with like the friendship of people wanting to be friends. I think when you're talkative and warm and then fun, people want to be friends with you. Yeah. Like, and I'm like, oh, there's like a reality of like, I always think of it like a pizza. I'm like, all my 8 slices in my life are gone.
Yes.
So it's not you. I literally don't have real estate. I would be banking some of my other core value, like bankrupting if I did this. So I used to just be like, I don't have any more capacity for friends. When people would ask me out for coffee, this was like overshooting. And they'd be like, I remember getting back a Facebook message when I was learning boundaries. They're like, oh, okay, no, I wasn't looking really for friendship. I actually wanted to ask you about blah, blah, blah. You know, and I was like, oh, so I kept on like, this is kindness. Like, die right now. You know, like, don't get any hopes up. But so finally, what I've just realized is there are some natural, like, I'll like wait a week before I respond. And then I'll maybe give them 2 weeks out. Like, I will let some of like purposely communicate the pace that I have because I want to create realistic expectations.
Yes.
Or even like, I won't, like, I am at my capacity with text response. So when I have a new friend, even if I want to, my ADHD wants to respond quickly. I'm like, I cannot set up unrealistic expectations.
Because it'll only be this for the first few little weeks. And then I'll go back to doing my normal thing, which then will hurt you.
Yes. And you're like, what happened? You gaslit me. That's what I realized. I'm like, oh, I don't want to gas. This is what you're getting. It's kind of raw over here. If you want it, great. It's jungle.
Yeah. Which a lot of what you're sharing is I have acceptance for where I'm at and what my capacity is. And I don't feel shame about that. I don't feel like I should be more or have more to give. And because I'm aware of that, I'm also more aware of what I do have to give. And I see that it's valuable and I want to be able to give that wisely. Yeah, that's greatly succinct. I've taken the judgment out of not being able to meet, like, again, like the short order, what they have for myself. And then I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when people would ask, I'd almost be like, how dare you even put in an order? And I was like, hey, they don't know what's in my kitchen. Like, they don't know what's in my pantry. Yeah, totally. I'm like, you get to ask. I'm going to say, you go, well, 2 French fries. You just did it. But like, we'll see what they take. But I also like, one of the things that has been helpful is coming to terms with my capacity. Like actually being like, I am a finite being. It is not my job to meet everybody else's needs. Like if I'm not their answer, not putting myself in the God spot. Honestly, we're like, if it's not me, they're going to have another friendship that like the Lord can work something out. I'm not their only answer. And it's okay to not have more to give. Yeah.
I want to add something real quick to that because you talked about your 8 pizza slices of
friendship,
of friendship and stuff like that. One of the things that I had to assess, and I wasn't doing it early on, is I was giving myself away freely to everyone, right? And I wasn't having those boundaries. And so the 8 pizza slices were suffering.
Like the friends were.
Yeah, the friends were, right? Because you have these relationships. I wasn't sitting down considering like, okay, what is the top priority? And I had to begin to prioritize my life to set really good boundaries inside of it and to know why I was setting it. So for me, I even looked at it and went, these core friends aren't getting any of me. And I'm just handing myself over here because these people feel like they're in need. I feel like I should be giving myself over to this. And then these people who are close to me will kind of put up with it. And that's not okay. And so I had to do a life assessment and reassess like, what is priority? What does it look like to communicate value? And then after that, then I get to assess what's my capacity. Because after I've found like, here's where I'm extending myself to the immediate people that are feeding me life and I'm feeding them life back and forth. Then I go, all right, here's the last pizza slice. This pizza slice is going to get sliced up in this many ways.
24 ways.
And this is how much you can get out of that. And that helped change the entire dynamic of things through understanding that.
I love all these analogies.
Well, I do think, I just want to real quick, the boundaries being essential for living out of your core values. Like what your priorities or what you say is important to you. If you let anyone take anything, you actually can't be a person of integrity that says what matters. You're just letting it be a free for all. So that's changed any shame I felt around boundaries where I'm like, actually, I'm protecting, I feel the Holy Spirit, but the yes that I meant to for this season, because it shifts. I actually have a habit where every season shift, I assess what my like marching orders are. So then I align my yeses or my nos. So I'm like, oh, I know this is what I meant to. Like, we'll see in the fall if it shifts, but for now, this is my purpose. So I can feel, it doesn't feel like emotional. It's like, I know I'm actually aligned with my purpose. So I have peace because I'm living out of what I meant to live out of this season. Yeah.
I love what you're saying about core values because I remember like my core value was like love everyone and meet all of their needs. And so I thought I was living out my core values. But then what would happen is I would come home and I would be so done because I had given everything to everyone else. And then I had nothing in the relationship with Justin. I was tired. I was like, I need space. I was short with him because I used all of my emotional leash. Like if we think about capacity, like I used all of my window of tolerance, all of that, the capacity I had with other people. And then I would come home and Justin would need something and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I need alone time. Or, oh my gosh, I can't do that right now. Like, because it's almost like I believed that we should be fine. Like we're supposed to suffer in order to take care of other people. And I think that happens in a lot of places where in families and like your family suffers because you're giving to so many things or your family suffers because you're too busy. You're smiling over there.
I'm smiling because I feel so validated. I'm like, you're saying this. I'm like, I've been getting validated recently in podcasts with you. This is pretty good. I like this. Like, do you want to tell me more? It's funny because like, I remember so often, like, especially when you were deeply engaged in speaking events and you did a lot of those and I'd be with you on those. It didn't matter that I was in deep suffering in some situation and I could be begging, please go. It's like, no, one more person. No, one more person, which I get it. There was a lot in there. And
I also think that's an old school Christian mentality is our family will suffer for the sake of every other person.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember feeling that deep neglect, like all these other people matter more than the fact that I'm suffering in this. And I could feel a lot of pain inside of that. Not that I'm throwing you under the bus in that. You're talking about it. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was very much something I experienced. And I've felt a lot of readjustment of your priorities in your process.
Yeah. Well, boundaries became a do or die for me.
Yeah, it really did.
So we'll kind of transition to talking through like how we learned boundaries and how we started practicing them maybe. I will start when I worked at the front desk at Bethel. That's
when I met you. For the record, I remember you were in I was like, I like your shirt, and you're like, my mother-in-law has good taste, and she bought this for me. So shout out to Justin's mom.
That's cute and realistic. I probably actually remember what shirt it was because she bought me a shirt when I got married, and it was beautiful. So they gave a script for boundaries.
Oh wow.
That we had to use, and I thought, this is crazy. I'm never going to use this. And the script was like, I'm so glad that you called. I really want to work with you and help you, but I need you to speak to me in a more honoring way, or I need you to bring your tone down in order for me to be able to hear you and help you.
Oh my gosh, this was literally like boundary boot camp for you.
Yes.
But this is perfect. You probably needed this.
It was an exact script. And I remember the first few times I had to do it. Now, I was like, I'm never going to use that. I don't need that. Like, I can talk through with anyone. Like, I had such an ego. One of the things I had around boundaries was like, I actually thought I was such a good person because I could give all of me away. Wow. I thought I can deal with the most difficult people and I can deal with all of them. And like, I'm like a never ending giver. Like that felt like so glorifying that it was really that I could abandon myself for a really long time. Yeah. And I thought, ooh, look at me with Christian grit, but it was horrible. And so what would happen is people would talk to me, and it's funny because that's the customer service job I had the most crazy situations. People were so angry and so upset at Bethel. And when they called in, and what would happen is I would do all the nice things. I wouldn't set a boundary, and we'd get off the phone and I would feel so angry because I felt like I just got punched in the gut or slapped in the face for something I didn't do. I was like feeling abused. I was feeling violated and I would just feel angry. And I remember that happening over and over again. And I was like, I can't get this feeling of being I don't like feeling out of control like this. And it was a little bit more extreme. And I think I needed a more extreme scenario to help it kick over because I didn't know how to learn it on my own. And so what I started recognizing is every time I felt angry, and this helped me start to notice this in all of my relationships. Because here's the truth. I was getting resentful of a lot of friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of the time when they would ask something that I didn't want to do or that I couldn't do or that I felt overwhelmed, I just wasn't paying attention to that anger. And so anger became a flag for me. When I notice that I'm getting angry, it means I ran over a boundary I should have set. And that's my fault. It's not the person's fault because they're just using the space that I have given them.
Yeah.
They are taking up the space that I have said, here, you can have all this room. And so I started being like, noticing, okay, what do I feel before I hit anger? what are a few emotions back? I'm starting to get on edge. Oh, this isn't starting to feel good. And so then I started saying the script, and having a script was so helpful because I would follow the things. And then it didn't work a couple times because I was so panicked setting a boundary. My boundary sounded like a crazy person. I'd be like, thank you so much for calling. I'm so glad that you're here and I want to help you, but I can't have you talk to me like that. Like, cause it wasn't even that I wasn't trying to be mean or aggressive. I had so much panic about the idea of setting a boundary. My panic came off really edgy.
Yeah, you're actually having to push through a major wall that you've had forever, which is this like this rule. The wall is like a rule that I have, and now I'm having to punch through this giant rule wall in order to like express this.
Yes.
So there's all this gusto behind it. Yeah, that makes sense.
And but then the more I did it, the easier it got. And then the more I did it, the more you're like, this is actually like, you start to normalize it. Anything that is new costs you a lot, and it feels so high stakes. Like, this is going to ruin the whole world if I have a voice, and this is going to create such chaos. And you do a boundary, and then you realize the world is fine.
It did not end.
It did not end. We're okay. And then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you start to be like, oh, this is actually manageable. This is something I could implement into it can become a lifestyle and a habit. And that was the beginning of me starting to process boundaries. What was
so good.
Part of you?
I would say, actually, the first time the concept became aware to me was, so I moved away to college, and my mom, when I was younger, our relationship was really tumultuous, like lots of aggression and yelling, and she's since done a ton of work, and we actually have a decent relationship, which is so cool. But at that point, so when I call her, it was usually yelling. It was usually derogatory. It was name calling. It was cursing. So that's all we had, and it was long distance. I remember the first year of college, my freshman year, I would just call her less and less because I'm like, why would I go into that? Like,
I don't want to be yelled at in a derogatory way.
And I'm having oh my gosh, my extroverted little self. It was the first time that I had ever been by like you're 18.
Oh yeah.
I literally didn't sleep in my own bed for like 4 weeks. I had a contest to see, but I was like, I was a Christian, not sleeping around. I was sleeping on floors of my friends' dorms and couch. It was terrible. At one point, I remember walking back to my house, probably like the fourth week. I was like, this is actually dumb. I could sleep on a bed that's no one's in. Why am I have this thing going? So that being said, I was having my best life. So I was like, I'm not calling my mom. I'm having so much fun. And then finally, like, that became a point of contention. And I was like, I'm not going to pay your cell phone bill anymore if you don't call me. So then I felt like totally choked, like this leash. So then I was in my room, and I was on the phone, and it was on speaker, and I was sitting next to it, and she was yelling and cursing, and I had it just on mute, and I was just crying like next to it. And my roommate came in because she was like confused at what she was hearing, and it was like an odd situation. And she was like, she figured it out, and it was on mute, obviously. And she was like, why are you letting your mom talk to you like this? And I was flooded with anger at her because I was like, I think my internal thought was, how dare you say that I'm letting her treat me like this? Like, there is nothing in me that wants to be treated. But I think that was the nuance of want versus letting. And like, that's the difference of a boundary. And I was like, oh, and I said something back like, hey, that really hurts. I don't want her to treat me. She's like, I didn't say want. She was like, have you told her she's not allowed to treat you or talk on the phone like this? And I was like, no. So then she left. I hung up that phone call. It wasn't profound. And then I just went on this like walk of like, okay, I've never given her this feedback. And it was a little bit of a conviction of that, how often I was afraid of her reaction, but I wasn't giving her feedback. I was enabling the behavior. Yeah. And even just thinking of, we have some history in our family of like someone walking through drugs and watching the enabling behavior of like, oh, if I don't tell you this isn't okay, I'm participating somehow. And this awareness of like, that's not serving your recovery. Yeah. Like, you're not, me saying this is okay and we get to keep going this path is not helpful. So I was like, I'm going to give her so I decided my like basics were I had to almost have a script for myself. It was name calling wasn't okay, yelling, cursing, or being mean. And I remember calling her, literally, like you said, my heart was racing. It was the first time I called her afterwards. I was like, hey mom, I'd like to talk to you on the phone. If you want to talk to me on the phone, these are what I'm going to need. And instantly, like loud and cursing. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to hang up if you break one of them. Okay, Mom, I'm hanging up now. Okay, you can call me back. And then hung up. And then it was
How
probably,
did you feel after that?
I was like, like, is that allowed? Is this legal? Am I not going to heaven anymore? Because I just hung up on my no. But there were
It's
like,
really wild when you do a new thing. You're like, wait, was that allowed?
yeah, like, Jesus, we're still good. Like that, like revoke my take. No, I'm kidding. But it does kind of feel like this, like antithesis of like what I had built up, like a Christian or unconditional love is.
Right.
So then she immediately called me back, and I had to hang up quite a few, like same thing, like, hey Mom, okay, if you're ready to not yell, and like it's okay, I'm gonna have to hang up. So then that went on truly for a year, that whole year.
Kidding. Wow.
And I think we got further out. I believe it was
How
around
many
3
times
weeks. Well,
did you have to do it?
I wouldn't call her. I wouldn't answer after the third. So she would call back up. I would do 3 is what I could give her. Because again, and I was like, oh, if I keep going, that's another boundary. I can't actually emotionally do that. And then I'm dysregulated.
That's too much. Yeah. It'll destroy my soul.
So then it was like
I'm
3
amazed
weeks.
you could do 3. That's impressive.
Well, actually, I think that's the interesting part is the better you get at it, it doesn't cost you as much. So I wasn't getting dysregulated. I got like built up the muscle. So the 3 weeks went by, and then I think we were actually just able to have a little bit of a phone call. Fast forward, it got more and more. It almost reminded me of like a puppy, potty training a puppy.
Yes.
Where it's not this one. You like, it would be glorious.
You want a boundary to be one time and they get
this is where you pee. Oh, you peed over here. This is where you pee. You're like, dang it. But it is possible to potty train dogs if you stay with it. Like stick with like, this is what works for me. So then fast forward after a year of just slowly like defining my boundaries, I remember hanging up the phone with my mom. I'm probably going to feel emotional. And I had laughed with her on the phone. Aww. And I all of a sudden was reflecting. I was like, I don't actually ever remember laughing with my mom in all my childhood. And I just started crying. And it was that moment I was like processing. I was like, if I hadn't actually protected our relationship with a boundary, it would have never created enough safety for us to heal, for her to heal and show up differently, that I would feel safe, that I actually got to be safe enough to laugh.
Wow.
And it was like, it took me literally over a year to get there. But I was like, I care. This is what I have to give. Let's see. And then she just being patient with it. And now it's actually a little bit further. You know, it's been like boundaries with then getting married. And this is what it looks like for you to show up in our marriage. And then this is how is okay for us to talk to our kids and not. And it's been this not one or done. But now my kids, my mother-in-law is amazing. She's literally a, NICU nurse, because she loves babies, and she's soft and empathetic and just oozes. She literally like, you know, like that lady. And my mom is not. She's like a little more gruff, like, you know, and my kids pick, like she knows this, but they actually are like, if we could live by anybody, we'd choose grandmama because blah, 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 blah. And then this moment after we had that conversation around the dinner table, I think it was like last year, I started crying because the Lord was like, if you had never set that boundary 10 years ago, this is the fruit of actually being like, you're showing your mom how she gets to treat you so that she grows into safety, so she gets to be in your kid's life. Because I remember saying at 18, like, my mom's never going to know my kids.
Totally.
Because she's not going to hurt my kids the way but like with this consistency. And then she actually a couple years ago was like, hey, can you call me more with your life being so busy? It's hard. And I instantly was like, no, I can't. And I was like, okay, maybe I could. So then I decided what I was going to do. I'm a habit, but I was like habit lady. I was like, if I call her on the way to get my kids from school, that's my anchor moment, because our lives are so fluctuating that it was really hard to find a long time that was peaceful. So I was like, instead of being long, what if I did short more often? Yep. So I call her on the way to school. It's literally 8 minutes, and we hang up when the kids get in. So we talk like 3 or 4 times. I talked to my mom triple what I ever talked to her. And it's safer. And I actually feel loved because she does a really good job of practically. So like following up with how that talent show goes. So she might not ever be the one that's giving me marriage advice.
Totally.
But with that, like figuring out what how I can make boundaries to receive what she does have to give versus just writing her off. Like, it's been a game changer. And sadly, my stepdad just passed away last month. And I was, when he was passing, I was in the room and I was just reflecting on like how I'd shown up in the relationship. And he was part of that conversation 2 years ago when he asked us to call him more. And I was like, all of a sudden I realized like, oh, if I hadn't said that yes, I would have a totally like a third of the connection that I've had. But because I decided, like, I knew what they wanted and I went into my kitchen and saw what I had to give, like, I was so up to date with their lives and they were so in my kids' life because I found a boundary that worked for both of us. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad that I didn't just say no or yes, that I found something that protected our relationship. And yeah, it's just crazy when you look back, you're like, okay, it's worth the work.
That was worth it.
It was so worth it.
I mean, and worth it for multiple things. Worth it for him to be involved. Worth it because now when your stepdad died, your mom has relationships with you and your kids, which is amazing. Worth it that your kids love her. Like they've never experienced the same thing that you had. Like, but was a lot of work.
So much work.
And I think that what you're sharing is so beautiful. I was tearing up multiple times because most people, what we want to do is we want to just label the other person when they can't change their behavior in a couple of boundaries. So it'd be so easy nowadays to be like, my mom's just a narcissist and she's never going to get over it. And so I'm done.
She can't love me.
And she doesn't listen to my boundaries. She doesn't take care of my boundaries. So I'm out, and that ability to be like, I'm going to hold firm on my boundaries and I'm going to find boundaries that work for me. Even the thing of what can I give? Oh, I can give an 8-minute call that has a definite end. And I discuss it with her before. So she doesn't have hurt feelings when I have to end suddenly. She doesn't feel frustrated like I'm never giving her enough because she knows this is my offering to her.
And we actually had a convo before that. I was like, hey, let's do it for a month and see if it hits some of what you're hoping for it to hit. I think it will. And so she felt powerful in it. And like, it's cool. She would actually even talk to the teacher sometimes because she would be, it was so regular. And I was like, oh my gosh. And even too, it led to more connection of one of the things that we found boundary wise was writing cards because there's not interchange. So like sending the kids art, like we just have blank cards with the kids. So when I send probably like once or twice a month, but because we called, we knew what was happening in their life. So it was like so much easier to have stuff to send them so that I went home for my stepdad's funeral, seeing like all these cards we had given, like, like the idea of like, oh, that yes. And that boundary work made way for this yes. That was also within the parameters of what I do have to give. And it actually yielded so much fruit. I think a lot of times we assume it won't work or it won't be worth it or it's not possible. And you're like, don't assume. Give yourself permission to experiment. Try something for a month, what doesn't feel like you're betraying your capacity, and then pivot, edit. Like it's not just this or no option. You're like, there's so many variations along the spectrum.
Oh yeah.
What I love is, again, like your boundary work was leading towards the potential for connection, the potential for repair, because part of what's happened inside of this is there's repair inside of it.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things that's really scary for people that you were doing is, and what you're talking about in boundaries is negotiating, right? Because there's in black and white thinking, it's either this or that. And everything you're talking about is like, I'm going to negotiate the terms of this experience. I'm checking in and being like, hey, would that work for you? Let's try this for a month. Let's see if that works out. I think I can do this. And again, I don't think we've ever been trained in the art of negotiation relationally.
Or that it's applicable to relationships.
Absolutely. And I think that's been, it's so key in boundaries, especially because it's like the boundaries that aren't seemingly done well are usually because there isn't negotiation inside of it. It's like, okay, there's only this option. And you're not involved in this option whatsoever. You have no say in it. This is how I'm going to do this type of thing. And it's so cool that you're able to initiate the negotiation.
Yeah, I also think something, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I also think that something you talked about is repetitive boundaries and talking about it like training a puppy. And I have found this to be true, that oftentimes you have to do something repetitive times and people will learn, but some things are so deeply ingrained in us that it takes time to actually transform. And people are very similar to toddlers. Like, let's say that with a toddler, one time you say no and you hold to it, and the next time you use for a sucker, and the next time you say no, but they throw a fit and you give them a sucker. That you have now created a scenario where they know there is a chance that they could get that. And that happens with the people around us. It's an adult behavior that if you would have, let's say that your mom called and she cussed at you and you would have let her go past it, it would have trained her, oh no, I don't have to pay attention to these boundaries. People learn whether they have to follow your boundaries or not based on the follow-up behavior you give them. So what oftentimes is we say the words, I'm setting this boundary, or like, this is what I'm doing. You can't talk to me this way. But if we let them talk to us that way, even though we've said you can't, the action is showing they can. And so then we get mad because we're like, you're running over my boundary, but they're not. But you have to have the action to follow
right, because they end up getting the message, but you didn't really mean it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it was fine with you then.
Right.
So it's fine. And so you had action that followed through with that. I thought I would share. Did you have something? I didn't want to cut you off.
Oh, I was going to share a little bit about how I stumbled on boundaries.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, please.
I think one of the things that I notice is when people run over their boundaries or people say it once or twice, offense starts happening. Like you don't like, and not realizing that ownership is on, it's almost like it's your fence on your side of the like property line. You have to take care of your fence.
Yeah.
Versus like, I can't believe they didn't put a fence up after I said, like, actually, it's your job to put the fence up, and you might have to repair it or do whatever. But I think this idea of like, and I told him 4 times, and I'm like, you might have to tell them 400 times.
Yes.
Are you willing to? And there's some relationships that it's a no, but there's other relationships that like, okay, like if I make it small enough, like a script, then it doesn't cost me.
Yes.
And 400 times, like, sure. If I like emotionally engage a big level and come up with an answer every time, that's going to be exhausting.
Yes.
So like script like answers are super helpful for the repetitiveness without offense building, you know?
Well, and what you said too is like the different relationships. So I think if it was an acquaintance, you'd never set a boundary 400 times. Yes. Like they'd be out. But
we'd call the police and be like, you cannot come over my house. I'm sorry. Yes. Cross the line.
But your mom is a major primary relationship. And I thought I would share, and then I'll get to you, but it's kind of a segue. Yeah. Very similar story that I had with my mom about having to set a repetitive boundary. I wish I would have looked at it a little bit more like you. I wish I would have had expectations to start with that repetitive boundaries matter, that you have to do boundaries oftentimes repetitively, especially if people have repetitive behavior that has been fine for years. So my mom, I grew up with her wanting to kill herself, and knowing that and feeling so much pressure in my own soul to find a way to keep her here and save her. And she often would say, you're the only reason I'm alive. And then as I got older, I was her only friend, and she stayed in her home for 10 years and became a hoarder. And so she explained that I was the only reason she was alive. And it also felt that way to me. Like logically, I was like, you have nothing. Like she was not connected to my dad. She wasn't doing any fun activities. She had no hobbies. She had no friends. She had nothing. It was only me that brought joy to her life, but not enough joy to want to keep her here, obviously. And so she would call me whenever she'd get really suicidal, and she would be telling me about how much she wanted to die. And it was really hard for me to handle. Yeah. And I remember thinking, you can't, like, if I set a boundary here, she'll kill herself. Like she has nothing. There's like the picture I had is like, I am the only lifeline that is holding her to the planet. But I was starting to hate her. And it wasn't even like her I hated. It was like feeling so consumed and so trapped. The feeling was, I'm trapped. If I don't meet all of your needs, you will die. And so I actually had to get to the point, and I wanted to share this story about boundaries because so many of us are panicked about setting boundaries. And the goal is that we actually get to acceptance. So I cannot, for my mental health, I cannot handle you calling me saying that you want to kill yourself right now. I had to be like, I accept that she may kill herself. That is an option. Yeah. That's very true. And I am choosing that I need that boundary so that I don't become hateful, so that I don't I went way too far with my mom. So I had so much avoidance. I avoided her. Like now I look back and I'm like, if I could have had boundaries earlier in our relationship, I could have had more relationship with her, because boundaries would have enabled us to have something. What ended up happening is it felt so horrible to be consumed by her overwhelm of depression that I would try to avoid her at all costs because it was too much for me. And it wasn't that I wanted to avoid her. I actually loved her. I just wanted to avoid the powerless feeling I had of having no boundaries. Now I can look back and see that. But so I remember the first time, it was in the same season of learning to set boundaries at Bethel, where I called her and I was like, Mom, I love you so much and I want you to stay alive. But it is too overwhelming for you to call me telling me that you're thinking about killing yourself. I can't fix that. It feels so heavy for me. I love you. So if you start to talk about wanting to die, I'm going to have to get off the phone. I want you to know that there are other people you can start to call. There are people Facebook had come out. I'm like, you can find people on Facebook to talk to. You can find sermons that you like. You can find, like I gave her some ideas. Here are some other resources. You can get more counselors. Like here's other ideas of how you could get connection besides me. So I did that. And then the next call, she cried a lot.
I was going to ask what she did.
Yeah, she cried a lot. I don't think she was like, I'm sorry. I think she was just like overwhelmed by it maybe. So then we had another conversation. She did the same thing. And I was like, Mom, I love you, but I can't talk about this with you. I'm going to have to go now. Then, Mom, I love you, but I can't. And it was over and over and over again, probably for similarly like a year, every time we talked. But what happened was she started to recognize that I would still have relationship with her. And most people think a boundary means you're going to completely disconnect from them. And so that's why they're terrified of boundaries. But I didn't disconnect from my mom. I just kept to the boundary. So she started to recognize you're still going to do relationship with me. You're just not going to do it on these terms. And you know what? She stopped doing it. And her things were cute. Like she got obsessed with Joseph Prince. We all joked that like she was having an affair with Joseph Prince because she would listen to him for hours every day.
Do you think she got that idea from you? When you said like what?
Possibly, but I don't know. Yeah. Like, and then there's another Andrew Womack. She like listened to him all the time, and she started doing these things. And so when she felt really depressed, she did things to deal with it instead of coming to me. And if there was one regret I wish I would have done it 10 years earlier, because also what happened is the body memory of me wanting to avoid my mom at all costs lasted. There's still things I'm unwinding from that body memory because I didn't know I was allowed, because we always find a reason to say why boundaries aren't allowed. Like unless you've learned boundaries, it's easy for people to be like, I can't set a boundary because it'll hurt them way too much. Or I can't set a boundary because then they'll go into a depression. Or I can't set a boundary because people will think I'm bad. I can't. And the idea is if I can do it with my mom who's threatening to kill herself, and I really don't know what else she has, anyone can set a boundary. And the goal is that we can set them up so that we set up ourselves for success and the relationship for success.
It's good.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we should, with the time that we have left,
wrap up
instead of me sharing.
Is it 53 or 58? Oh, 53 is a minute. Okay. Now I'm checking.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Is this still on? I thought you broke camera real quick. I thought you were going to edit that out.
That's very cute. That's very cute. I love it. That's a great moment. Now we're going to do a series on boundaries. So we'll have you jump into the next series. Okay. The next podcast I'm really excited about because we're going to talk about how to set medium boundaries instead of doing the extreme ones of all or nothing. And I think people are going to learn a lot. This is one of those episodes that I think will be very helpful for people. If you're listening to this, please share it with other people. Like that's one of the best gifts you can give us. We do this for free because we want to help as many people as possible. Counseling costs money. The other day, I got a message from somebody that said that they did like a trauma art dance recital or something. And at the end of it, they were talking about how they worked through trauma. And they said, if you can't afford therapy, watch The Connected Life. And I loved that so much. And I was like, yes, that's why we do it here. And so we'd love to have you share this with people. so that the message gets around.
Yeah.
Jenna, what are ways people can find you?
Oh, I'm a habit coach.
Yeah.
So Jenna Zint on Gmail. Nope. Well, that is my email. You're welcome. You can email me there. Or just Jenna Zint on Instagram. My habit coach is called The Habit Lab. So I have a podcast about it. And then thehabitlab.org is where my info lives, all my info.
Yeah,
Thanks for
she's
having
a
me, guys.
genius habit coach. And if you need scripts for how to set boundaries, I'm sure you could meet with her for a couple sessions.
We do lots of script work.
Yes.
Too. Like it's just helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love
That's
that.
so good.
Thanks so much.
And if you haven't, hit the subscribe button and push the bell button too, because then that'll alert you to when we get new episodes. Wah, wah, wah. And
that's it.
I'm going away.
Okay,
bye.
Bye.
Bye.